This is 7.7b rotations. The objective of this lesson is to learn to transform plane figures using rotations. Now remember, a transformation is a change in a figure's position or size. Translations, rotations, and reflections are different types of transformations. The resulting figure or image of a rotation is congruent, which means it's the same, to the original figure. Now, when we're looking at a rotation turns a figure around a point called the center of rotation. So looking at the different types of rotation, you have 180 degrees. The rule for that is you multiply both coordinates by a -1. So instead of having xy, you would have the opposite of x, opposite of y. Now if you're just doing a 90 degrees and you're going clockwise, remember clockwise is going to go this direction. Then you multiply each x coordinate by a -1. Then switch the x and y coordinates. So instead of xy, you now have y -x. Now if you're going 90 degrees counterclockwise, that would be this direction, you would multiply each y coordinate by a -1, then switch the x and y. So instead of xy, you would have -yx. So let's look at this example. Number 1 asks us to graph the rotation of triangle XYZ 180 degrees about the origin. Okay, the first thing you're going to need to do is to figure out where is X, Y, and Z. Well, X is -1, +2, Y is +2, +3, and Z is 3, 0. So we're going to write that out in a chart. And then I'm going to apply the rule. Now it says here that we're going 180 degrees around. That means I need to multiply both coordinates by -1. So let's multiply each of these by a -1. So when we do that, instead of -1, we'll have +1, then -2, -2, -3, and -3, 0. So then you're just going to plot those points. You would have 1, -2, -2, -3, and -3, 0. And then if you're just going to connect those lines, you would get what the figure is going to look like rotated 180 degrees around. And in this case, around the origin. So let's look at number 2. Graph the rotation of triangle ABC 90 degrees counterclockwise. Remember, counterclockwise, we are going this direction. Okay, but when it says to do 90 degrees counterclockwise, it says multiply each y coordinate by -1, then switch the x and y coordinates. So again, I'm going to make up my table here, and I'm going to apply my rules. It says, step 1, multiply each y coordinate by a -1. So I'm just going to multiply just the y coordinate by -1. Which that would give me 4, -4. This would give me 4, -1. And this would give me 2, -1. Now I'm just going to do the step 2, which is just flip those. So instead of 4, -4, I'm going to get -4, +4. -1, 4. And -1, 2. And if you see, that triangle has been rotated right over there, that A prime, B prime, C prime that's in the red. That's that rotated triangle, 90 degrees counterclockwise. Now, example 3, it shows us that if we graph the rotation of a triangle FGH 90 degrees clockwise. Now, again, I'm going to make up my chart. It says, from going 90 degrees clockwise, multiply each of the x coordinates by a -1. So when I do that, I'm going to get 4, -2. I'm going to get -1, -3. And +2, -4. Because remember, a negative times a negative gives you a positive. Now, step 2, flip the x and y. So, -2, 4. -3, -1. -4, 2. And then if we plot them, it'll look like this. That's rotated 90 degrees clockwise. Now with number 4 here, you can also do that with just a point. Remember your rule. Give the coordinate of 1, 4 after a 180 degree rotation around the origin. Pause the video and try this one on your own. You should have gotten the point, -1, -4. Now let's look at number 5 here. This is asking you to find out what it's going to be when you rotate it 90 degrees clockwise around the origin. So pause the video, follow the rule, and see if you can figure this one out. If you did this correctly, you would have multiplied the x coordinate, got -1, 4, and flipped them to get 4, -1. Now looking at number 6, it wants you to give the coordinates of 1, 4 after a 90 degree counterclockwise rotation. So why don't you look at the rule, pause the video, and try this one on your own. Now if you did this one correct, step 1, you would have multiplied the y coordinate by a -1, gotten a 1, -4, and then step 2, you would flip them, and you would end up with -4, 1. Alright, look at number 7. Graph the triangle ABC after a rotation of 180 degrees about the origin. So remember to look at your rule, which tells you to multiply both coordinates by -1. I want you to write down each of the coordinates, A prime, B prime, and C prime, and tell me what those coordinates are, and graph it on the grid. When you're done with it, bring it up for me to check, and I will give you the worksheet to work on.